this bill.
I call the Honourable Member Eugenie Sage.
E te mangai o te whare tēnā koe. Tuarua ki ngā mema o tō tātou whare tēnā koutou katoa. Tua toru mihi atu ki te wiki o te reo Māori. Tēnā koutou katoa. Mr Speaker, the Green Party would have liked to have supported the Dairy Industry Restructuring Amendment Bill. We have concerns about the environmental management of dairying, but we want Fonterra to succeed. The bill introduces a new milk price regime to strengthen the existing incentives for Fonterra to operate in accordance with the existing contestability standards in the Substantive Act. It gives statutory backing to Fonterra's existing governance and transparency processes by including them in the bill. It also introduces a new system for monitoring the farmgate milk price to be done by the Commerce Commission, and that the Commerce Commission will assess whether the farmgate milk price provides incentives for Fonterra to operate efficiently. That is useful, but, Mr Speaker, the Green Party's concerns with the bill centre on the new share trading system, trading among farmers. The purpose of TAF is to provide a capital base to act or to use as a buffer against redemption risk or the risk of losing capital because farmers leave the cooperative. Government members argue that TAF is an effective substitute for existing share issue and surrender obligations when farmers enter or leave the cooperative so that they can continue to do that freely. Our concern is that introducing TAF signals a shift to the demutualisation and corporatisation of Fonterra. Leonie Guiney summed up these concerns in her submission to the Select Committee. She framed the issue as a choice between keeping Fonterra New Zealand-owned and able to put cash into communities through the milk price, or enabling Fonterra to become a target for large-scale overseas investors. She said that trading amongst farmers was, and I quote, a temporary solution to a problem of redemption risk that has been exaggerated with an eventual loss of farmer ownership and control, end quote. The Green Party agrees. The bill will benefit capital markets from trading, but it's questionable whether in the long term it will benefit dairy farmers. And, Mr Speaker, Fonterra is the world's #1 dairy cooperative. And TAF creates a hybrid structure and two competing sets of principles between those regulating stock markets and those governing cooperatives, and that's where our concern lies. Because as a cooperative, Fonterra currently aligns the interests of dairy farmers who want their milk collected and a fair price given, and the fiduciary duties of the board to act in the interests of suppliers. But TAF changes that. And as the James Morrison consulting report to the Select Committee, as an independent advice to the Select Committee said, and I quote, the introduction of a new class of external investor, as proposed in TAF, creates a conflict for directors that is not resolved by dairy farmers retaining voting rights. And the tensions that will eventually arise between farmer suppliers to Fonterra, between external investors, and the Fonterra Board's fiduciary duties to those investors cannot simply be contracted out by the proposed systems. They represent, as Mr Morrison said, a high risk of ongoing conflict between investors and supplying farmers. And the result and likely outcome of that will be that the ownership of Fonterra becomes increasingly separate from farming over a period of several decades. So, Mr Speaker, as other speakers in this debate have noted, that where you get this conflict of interest between investors and suppliers, that every cooperative that has introduced external investors to its capital structure has eventually either demutualised or reverted back to a full cooperative by excluding those external investors. And, Mr Speaker, that's why the fundamental changes to the successful cooperative structure of Fonterra, it's why the Green Party is opposing this bill. Thank you.
I recognise the Honourable Member Mike Sabin. Tēnā koe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.